Bueno, buenos días a todos y a todas.
Good morning to all. Let's take our seats. Please remember that we
Media hora es este panel, ¿no?
Sí.
Entonces yo le introduzco y le paso
le paso la palabra.
O sea, la pregunta es el panel, es el estado,
Sí,
es
es
una
esto,
introducción al estado de la
Enrique,
política, cómo se ve
Perfecto.
desde
Enrique
sus
ya
lugares
dijo
en relación
que
con...
tiene justo 6 minutos armadito. Alex ya sabe. Están hablando ahí, intercambiando.
Perfecto.
¿Qué? ¿No te gustó?
Posso trocar o microfone contigo? Só abrir aqui, tá?
Perfecto. Obrigada. Arrancamos. Bueno, de vuelta.
we're back. Welcome. We're going to start.
A música.
Bienvenidos y bienvenidos.
Welcome to all. Now we're going to start our broadcast. We're working on social dream politics, integral ecological justice, social dialogue is the best policy for respect for human dignity. So let's start the first panel. So we have Santiago Barassi. We also have Alex.
Y Víctor Carmona.
And Victor Carmona. Very well. Good morning to all. Thank you, Anela. We are starting this third work journey today. As was presented before, we're focusing on the social dream. And what was planned was to start to approach the political dimension and dealing with politics. And so we're going to have a first panel whose purpose is to be the first input or a first push towards our goal, thinking about the different realities. And so we're going to have South America, North America, and Europe. And because this is the proposal, that this is what we propose to do in this meeting. So we're going to think about politics, think through our realities, and also considering a global scenario, but with a local flavor, because we know that we're talking about global issues. So I would like to thank you for the presence of each one of you. Enrique del Precio from the University of San Isidro in Argentina. Victor Carmona from the San Diego University in the United States. I think that we can start with Alex. Good morning. I would love to speak in Spanish, because I feel like I'm dancing when I'm speaking Spanish, but I don't have enough time, so I'm going to speak in Portuguese. I am Brazilian and I live in Portugal. I am father of a Portuguese girl, and I am the great-grandson of a Portuguese man, so I'm right in between. And I'm here today. And the thing is, my Portuguese is no longer Brazilian nor Portuguese. I am representing the president of OCP, and I'm Brazilian representing Portugal, so I'm very happy about that. And I'm very happy to share experience with my Portuguese colleagues. And there is this north-south distance. I am the coordinator of the religious studies in the university, and we are working around Laudato Si, especially how to think about public theology. There is only one theology course at higher education. It's the only one that is recognized by the government. There is no theology university in Spain. There is one exception in France, but all the other ones are not recognized as a lay course. So we're always assessed by philosophy panels from outside of Portugal, which is a very secularized view. So we always have to prove to them that we are not only purely religious. So that's in 2016. Pope Francis was asked who was his main influence in theology, and he mentioned Michel de Certeau. And from that, we went back to this dialogue between Foucault and Michel de Certeau to think about theology and ecology. So there are three elements that I would like to emphasize that we retrieved from this digging that we did. Foucault talked about the importance of a polyedric intelligence, and he used that to think about the contemporary world, especially politics and power, because he understood power as action over action. So we also explored the dimension of the criticism to the self-referentialism of power. So he's aware of this he becomes aware of this reading Borges from Argentina. So through fables, he realizes that there is a need to imagine a reality that is different from the one that we live in. And the third dimension that Foucault explores is in his search for understanding the cooling down of the revolutionary movements in the Western world, crossing the religious and the political agenda can be a revolutionary action. And he starts talking about political spirituality, and he understands this as a genealogy of ethics and a way to understand power and established powers that no longer are triggered to the dynamics of the lives of people. Another thing about Foucault is that he says that there is no social transformation without spirituality, and spirituality is broader than religion, but there is a conversion in this process, and this impacts Certeau. And in the exercise of translating this, we understand public theology as the second act of understanding an experience that aims at transforming culture. And in this sense, theology was conceived as Eucharistic in the public sense because it shares the culture and of the time it's inserted in, and also liturgic because it is a service to the people, because it looks for meaning and it tries to turn this into service to those who need. So in this liturgical Eucharistic public theology, we also work with this dimension of ecology, because the exercise of always remembering how this theological dimension was established as an exercise of dialogue between the unity and plurality. So in Certeau's, according to Certeau, God, being radically different from human beings, does not see difference as a hindrance for communion. Communion happens between what's different. And so our exercise is to see in the other dignity. So when we think about human rights, there is a public translation of Imago Dei in which we see in everything non-Catholic, everybody who's non-Catholic, we see dignity. So what he takes from Borges is that from fables we can imagine another world, a world we're not used to seeing, this scatological world that exists in the desire of transforming desire into action. And so the apocalyptic narrative, for example, of thinking about building new heaven and new earth has included in it an ecological appeal. We want to build new heavens and new earth. Starts with the desire and consolidates itself in the action that brings about the future. So moving towards my conclusion, I would only like to emphasize a political aspect of ecology and of this public hope that consolidates the transformation of today into a new earth and new heaven. So this translates into the consolidation of us, the perspective that this integration that is established in this phenomenon comes from a political and ethical dimension that states that people who are different have common problems and need to work together to find solutions. So repeating the words of Pope Francis, caring for the world around us that supports us means to take care of ourselves. We need to become an us that inhabits a common home, Fratelli Tutti 2017. So in this first exercise that we did, after 5 years, we were evaluated by the Portuguese government. So for the first time in our theology center, we received public funding to create the cluster of the common home in order to see theology as an element that helps build this us as a continuation of our human rights agenda, so that we can see in everybody the common dignity that inhabits us all. Thank you very much, Alex. So now we're going to establish a bridge from Portugal to San Diego, and we're going to hear from Victor Carmona from San Diego University. I'm sorry, he's speaking off mic. We do not have his sound.
De la universidad, a nombre del presidente de la universidad, es un gran
Victor Carmona, and it's a great pleasure to be with you. Thank you again for the invitation. And I would like to focus on the 3 points. First of all, what's the state of politics in the United States in the context we are living? We are. I am a theologian, so I am speaking from that standpoint. I believe we are going through a moment in which we are trying to establish a politics that creates walls and that offers a narrow vision of reality. And in the face of this dynamic, it is important to have an answer like this one, not only from universities, but also from churches that widen the horizon and allow us to breathe, making the walls to fall and building bridges. And so building bridges is very important in the current political context that we are seeing in the US. And that's why I invite you to think of the US as part of Latin America, because actually San Diego University is a Catholic university in the United States, very close to the border. We are separated from Latin America by 30 kilometers. So this is important so that we are able to achieve this kind of processes. And within this dynamic, I invite you to think, we Latin American people who live over there, I invite you to, we are around 60 to 65 million North Americans who are Latin in origin. And and a 2/3 of us were born in that country, and 1/4 of us speak Spanish as a mother tongue. We are more or less equivalent to the population of Spain or Argentina. So I invite you to think of the United States as part of of Latin America and as part of people who are part of the same family. So I invite you to recognize this. And this is the first point I would like to raise here. And the second point I would like to raise here is we want to build bridges, exactly, and then there we have Skipper's theology. Laudato Si, the ecological conversion. Our politics in the United States currently is fighting very much against the concept of ecological conversion. The ecological conversion, as we were saying yesterday, has many dimensions: personal, communitarian, and systematic, and etc. So I would like to talk to you in my third and last point about what San Diego University is doing as part of its engagement commitment with this this idea. Since 2021, we are a Laudato Si university, and then we are taking this ecological conversion not only in economical and political terms, but the principles of Laudato Si, they now guide the investment strategies of San Diego University. And this is because we believe that the elements of the market, that the elements that comprise the market are also based on Laudato Si. We are seeking this ecological conversion not only with regards to what we teach our students, but also at the communitarian level and systematic level. And those are the 3 points I would like to share with you today: bridges, conversion, and an investment related dimension in this ecological conversion. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Victor. Are you following us? We are doing our part in building bridges in between South America and North America. And to end this first moment, as we said, it would be the first input and the first reaction to our social dream day. We are now listening to Enrique del Percio, president of University San Isidro in Argentina. Thank you very much. When I was listening to Alex and Victor, I remembered how Camone spoke of the importance of the dialogue between theology and social sciences to avoid that each of those schools become isolated. So it is important to legitimize and rationalize the interest of economical and political nature. And here, I think that we join what was said, that these interdisciplinary meetings are very important. Very briefly, from the conceptual standpoint, if we think that there is an individual and not necessarily a society, we are going to have as key freedom, but freedom understood in this sense. For some, some people say your freedom ends where freedom of others starts. So there is a limit to freedom. So I think we are thinking of freedom in the sense of the lion who lives in the forest and does what they want. But on the other side, if there is society but there is no individual, thinking that every awareness is a social awareness, there is no individual awareness. At this point, we think of equality as the key, an equality that cancels the individualities. And so then we are going to start from another value. We are going to think as key, we are going to have as key fraternity. And of course, Genesis warns us against the dangers of a naive idea of sin. The first sin was to kill a brother, and so fraternity reminds us that relationships are horizontal, and this fosters conflicts many times, because Pope Francis would name it as immature fraternity. And we need to understand what is mature fraternity, understanding that the other is my brother and sister, and make in such a way that everyone becomes a brother and sister. And as Pope Francis explains in Fratelli Tutti, we can not understand it and realize ourselves if the others do not realize themselves. Every time we give something or we receive something, we understand more about it. And the problem that we have is this one. In the last 200 years, we have a Western world characterized by the industry and the army as the basis of its constitution, and this is a predatory activity. When we find someone to work in the industry in a undignified work, or someone dying for a cause he or she doesn't know, imposing four basic values for industry and trade: respect to authority, sacrifice, organization, and solidarity. But these four principles were also taken over by popular movements and unions to strengthen themselves, their structures, and continue fighting for the dignity of workers and the poor. And this ends when new technologies make in such a way that we do not need many children to foster industry and trade. I consume is important, but this is not, does not match those principles. And of course, we think of consumption. Of course, there is a veiled authority, but we do not ask our father about it. And consumption always makes you want to have something that the other do not have, and the problem seems to be very serious. But there is still political hope, because this child who is a product of the consumption society, which is an only child and the only nephew and the only grandchild, for the first time in history, there is an entire generation in which people say, thank you very much for having chosen this family to be born in. And this child has no debt towards anyone and everyone, it becomes a narcissistic child, but it is nevertheless a much more aware person than all of the others. In all of those universities in Europe, the United States, and Latin America, 1 out of 3 children who access university, they suffer from depression, anxiety, problems with consumption, or some difficulty in managing their emotions. And And many of them have two of those problems at the same time, and all of those are problems of those times, and we are wrongly thinking that we cannot address it as if it were an individual problem of each of those children, without realizing that they are crying out. We need to understand and find out. We need to learn that we are related. We are in relationships. So it is easier to hold on to fraternity outside home, but we know that sin starts in our mind. Maybe the artificial intelligence maybe will have an impact on that, but we know that peoples and the poor, they know it by heart, and Alexis knows we have a key, because we can recover this sense and we can become awareness that our people, they may have some problems of understanding reality. We all have it, but at the same time we know that our people, they desire, they wish for, they dream of, and they know that by dreaming alone they are only dreaming, but if they dream together, we are really having a dream that will have an impact in many different people. Thank you very much. This was the first intervention on which we are going to work during this day regarding the social dream, and also focusing on the political dimension as part, an intrinsic part of this dream. And I would like to thank you for sharing your views on these experiences and the reality of those studies at universities. And so this is the end of the first panel, and then Laura will tell us what will come next. Well, thank you very much, and we would like to ask you to go back to your seats, and we are now going to call the second panel, and we would like to invite the members of the next panel, and we would like to have our video from today. So it's another excerpt. So the culture, the throwaway culture, there is a use and throw culture, use and throw away, and it is a culture of misusing natural resources, of not following the nature towards a path of development and not allowing it to live. And this is a culture of throwaway that impacts us all. It is at all times something in which an education concerning the use of leftovers is missing, to remake things, to reuse them in terms of the common usage of things. And this throwaway culture also affects nature. So we should again find the path of knowing how to use nature in an appropriate way. And of course, nature may sound strange as a word, but we should establish a dialogue with nature. We must be sensitive to this, and we cannot overlook, in relation to this integral ecology, the dimension, the fact that the youth today are entitled to a balanced cosmos, and they have the right to wish for something, to hope for, and we need to organize it, and we need to make very serious decisions regarding this point. The extractivism, which is one of the most harmful things to nature, with mining activities and certain processes involving chemicals that pollute water, filling it with arsenic and to wash certain minerals, and then this water is going to be drank by the people. And so caring for earth and caressing it is very important. And Mother Earth, isn't it, needs to be taken care of. And our young people at universities, they need to learn to consider Earth as a mother of which we need to take care.
Estamos. Ahora sí, al fin. Para que no se aburran.
So I'd like to start the second session of the conference of this opening. We're happy to have Ernesto Villanueva from the National University, Arturo Jauresi from Argentina, and Diego Molea from the National University of Lomas de Zamora in Argentina. And we're going to talk about ecological justice. Good morning to all. I feel very happy to see how RUC is developing since the beginning when we started. But we were just rowing and rowing, and we reached a huge size. I believe that we have gone beyond our greatest expectations. I think that we planned many things that will trigger the working groups, but I would like to add 3 more things. On the one hand, this title that quote unquote is what Pope Leo XIV told us a few days ago. He talked about ecological justice. He talked about social justice and environmental justice. So we're talking about integrality of these justices. So this means that it's not that each one of us can work in the 3 dimensions, but we do have to have an integral dimension, so that if you work on one of them, the other 2 aspects need to be present. When we work in one of these, we have to think about the other 2. So I think this is a central point when we develop policies on social justice, ecological justice, etc. This is what integrality means, so that each one of us can work on the 3 aspects. The second point I would like to make, and I would like to mention Pythagoras and Plato text when they go into the discussion about politics. Politics, is it reserved to a few human beings, or does it encompass all? Well, in this text, they say that politics is the concern with the common good. It's not a specialty, such as being a carpenter or a doctor or a university professor. It's like a seed that each one of us has in their hearts. And we need to develop, the seed needs to grow. And Protagoras was very strict because he talked about those who are insensitive to politics. And it's very important to mention that too. So if we conceive political activity as an activity that is concerned with the common good, we access a set of actions for development that has nothing to do with the common good. And it seems that this is very much present in Latin America when we see politics and politicians being receiving so much criticism nowadays. And I think this is this is due to the powers that do not come from democracy. We are constantly showing the experts in politics, and we do not point at the same problems, the same errors in other. We don't point fingers at the same way to other sectors. We talk about economic problem, economic sector, media. So I don't know if we see this in all countries, but almost all countries in Latin America. The third aspect, just plagiarizing Francis a bit, is this issue of organization. If we have an integral approach, if we think that politics is for all, the organizational aspect is central, is crucial. Why? I said at the beginning, each one of us, the individual, cannot work with all the references as one, with all the aspects as one, at once. But if we consider what happens in the other spheres, we contribute to this specialization that we were talking about. I believe that in Rome he talked a lot about this. Pope Francis did. How specialization destroys our ability to understand the world that surrounds us. Also, denying what happens in other spheres, like this doesn't pertain to me. There's nothing to do with what I do. I think this organizational issue has to do to, it is something that we need to emphasize. In our university world, in our union world, but also in the world of global political activity, because only in this activity that we will be able to include all of these other spheres of union movements, of university. I think that the political world that is so much criticized is the only one that can include other powers, other aspects, and lead to the solution of problems. I believe that the theme of integrality, of justice, and also what politics means for each one of us, and also and lastly, the organizational aspect. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ernesto. Fernando, you have the floor. Good morning to all. I would like to start to answering my first question. I would like to mention a story. A few weeks ago, we had elections in my country, and the candidate comes from one of the wealthiest families in my country, a family that exports bananas, and he is a right-wing politician, not far right, but right-wing. It was a surprise. But of the most surprising things on the network, social media, was watching a video of him in a favela where there was a street that was flooded with water. And people were celebrating, in this context, people were celebrating that this right-wing candidate had won the election. So this lady was celebrating. And I asked myself, why was she celebrating? And then I remembered a phrase that says, the best product of capitalism is a right-wing poor person. And that's what I was saying. And I said, well, this is what I'm going to talk about. I want to understand why the situation happens. And what do I mean when I say this? I am concerned, I've been concerned for a long time, that the detachment of people from politics, and when you detach from politics, you are detaching from politicians' common good, as Ernesto was saying. The criticism and the lack of awareness or sensitivity towards politics is a problem. I would say that nowadays, I think that we are trying to solve well-being problems through consumerism, through working and buying. I work, I get money, and I buy. I buy what brings well-being to myself and to my family, health, education, leisure. I work, I buy for my people. And in this sense, why do I need institutions, state-owned institutions? It's the same, it doesn't matter. As long as I can keep working, getting money and consuming, buying, it's the same. I can get my well-being. So I say this. I'm getting closer to the theme. Don't think that I'm moving away from the subject. When we talk about the political dream, I think about what enchants and what destroys enchantment. So I think that there is a lack of sparkle in politics because you don't want to be a politician. I can be. I want to be a president. I want to be a political representative. Yes, but people say vote for me because I'm not a politician, but I want to be a president. So. And why does that happen? Because the thing is, it's packaged as a product. So it's a product that I like, so I vote for this product. So the dream of politics, and I go back to organization. The thing is this a dream or is it a product? So the best we can get is, can we get all the different justices without going through politics? I don't believe so. I don't think so. We can have a trend in this political indifference. I don't see how we can get a better world with good relationships with nature without going through politics, because there is this disenchantment about politics. It has lost its prestige. So my first reaction started with this video that I keep asking myself, because I don't understand how a poor woman can celebrate the election of a right-wing government. And then I am still confused, because I don't know if politics can bring about a dream that can move us. So I don't know. How can we do that? With a Peruvian Pope? So we have the same question for each one of us, because you all have a responsibility that had to do with political direction of your university. So what can we do in universities to organize hope, thinking that this hope has a political tool? So how do we organize this hope? We have a number of young people in the university, and the Pope said that they have the hope that they have the right to hope. So what can we do in universities to see politics as a tool to develop hope? Ernesto? In the case of our experience, this answer is simpler than in more developed regions, because for new universities that are located in developing territories where there has never been a university system, you just ask what does the country need, what does the territory need, and there is a direct relationship, and having this direct relationship, learning from the people, what are the problems that exist, how do you include the university in this population, and not the other way around. So we need to serve the people and not the other way around. And this is a reality for all of us who are professors at university. The danger is to move from a situation in which you serve to a situation in which you feel like you're higher or bigger than people you serve. So it's simpler. It's easier to develop something when there is nothing, there was nothing there before. It's more complex for universities that are older, in which there is this concept of the professors being higher than the students. For example, such as Coimbra University. There was this whole issue of where professors were seated and where students were seated, because professors were always seated higher than the students. And this was devised for the elites. So you turn, how do you transform universities that are like this? It's harder, it's more complex. I don't know how this happens here in Rio de Janeiro, because you have to you have to oppose tradition. So that's what I wanted to say. I'm going to start with a sentence, and then I'm going to tell you a story about my university. I don't know if Paulo Freire said this, but he could have said it, that educating is a political action. Politics is the best weapon to change the world. Well, not necessarily. There are ways to educate that maintain the world as it is, and there are ways of educating that lead you to question the world. So educating is a political action or act, because it has behind it political intentions. You educate for something. So with this idea, I believe that the university has to choose, and it has to have a very transparent political stance. I'm going to justify this with an example from my university. My university is going to turn 80. It was founded in 1946. And it started as a Catholic university with the goal of educating Catholic professionals in a world where people were trained in lay universities. So that was our stance. We have developed, doesn't matter how it developed or how it evolved. The thing is, university always has to educate people, form people, but they need to choose what people they're going to form or train. I believe that Jesuits, as a religious order, we ask the same questions. We wanted to change the world, and we've been educating princes and royalty for 500 years, because there was this idea that the elite ran the world. But what happened was that they discovered that the world is in the hands of a few, but there's also the middle class. There are collectives and social groups. There are many social actors that influence the configuration of the world. So when I say that educating is a political act, I think that universities should clearly choose what type of collective, what kind of political actor, individual, from a class or from an organization or ethnicity, do we want to give these tools that can be useful, such as, namely education. So it's not only educating, is choosing clearly. So universities have to clearly state their worldview. Universities are said not to have ideologies. The ones that say that they don't have, they do have. It's just like the politician who says is not a politician. Universities, all universities have a way they see the world. Sometimes they're not clear about it. Well, let's not say ideology, but it has to do with a worldview. So from this perspective, I educate, or I am educated. So in this way, we can contribute to recovering politics
and converting them into political actors. So we have almost 15 minutes, and so I have a last question for you, and also recognizing the spaces that you have built or helped to build by building bridges also. The question would be changing upscale, and instead of thinking of territory, thinking regionally or in a wider scale. How can we build bridges between those who are here to be able to achieve these three kinds of justice the way we were saying it? How can we build it, and how can we generate tools that may be politically used to achieve these three justices among ourselves? And then we have this timeline which is very clear, from Rio to Belém. How can we as universities offer an answer to those challenges of the common construction of these ideas and arriving in Belém with a common goal? The friend of the Portuguese university our friend from the Portuguese university who spoke previously spoke of building bridges. And it is certain that in Latin America those bridges are very much absent. When we run surveys about this kind of knowledge, typically what we find is that people know more the names of European presidents than Latin American presidents, and that people know more about the names of capital cities in Europe than in Latin America. And so this is the result of what empires have done in the past. To become an empire, you have to divide your subjects physically, but also conceptually in their consciousness. In such a way that they don't know the people who are next to them. And then in this sense, building bridges means getting together, promoting student exchanges and promoting those kinds of meetings and activities, because then we realize that we have to deal with very similar issues. Oh, your reality is very similar to mine, and we didn't even know. We very often hear this kind of thought when we meet, and this is very difficult because the prestige associated to what is known, the European capitals, for instance, is greater than the prestige that our brothers in the same region have. And so when we establish the scholarship system within Latin American countries, many times students do not choose to go to another country in the same region, but they choose to go to places that we already know of, like far away in Europe, North America. So this is very dramatic and it is truly dramatic because we contribute to a greater division among our countries. And it seems to me that from this point of view, if we apply this global reasoning to the idea of ecological justice and social ecological justice, well, we need to think of a set of policies that strengthen these topics that are around which we are gathering here. It's very difficult to offer one answer, but I think that there is a fundamental behavior or attitude. The Pope Bergoglio, he spoke of standing, resisting, being patient, because in those meetings, sometimes we take an airplane and then the airplane comes down, and then many times we cannot leave on high peak emotion. Sometimes we are up, sometimes we're down, sometimes we have to speak, sometimes we have to listen to conferences and ideas, sometimes ideas that we already know of, and sometimes new ideas. But this is the only way to build bridges and to establish relationships, because we need to think of the construction of a political and social strength, which requires time and patience, and I see no other option. And also, when you were asking your question, I remembered something that intrigues me, and I'm still curious about. In the 16th century in Latin America, there were already universities like San Marcos, San Gregorio's was created in 1622. And in the United States, they were eating wood not to die from hunger. So, and in the 17th century, there were more than one university. And what happened? What happened later? So why certain countries are capable of developing in a way that Latin American countries were not able to? And it seems to me that we should reverse all of those disaggregating processes of which we were subjects. And once and again, I think that we should not be discouraged in the face of a failure. And failure after failure, we are able to move forward, as Garcia spoke of, and he would tell the story of his failures, and we need to stand it. We need to move on in spite of our failures. Okay, very well. We are ending this panel. Thank you very much. I don't know if you have anything else to say, but it seems to me that we still have like a roadmap. And we have those stories of failure, but also many stories of fights and hope and interaction. And we should be able to recover this optimistic approach or stance. And we have been working together for some days, and you're coming from a meeting in Rome and in Tierra del Fuego, and there will be other meetings in the future. And it seems to me that many reflections are arising from these meetings, and so we are thinking of how can we work together, but we are already working together. We are already talking and exchanging ideas, and the idea that heads of universities and presidents and rectors of universities that are meeting at the same place is an unseen, unprecedented thing. And I think that we should be able to build new proposals from this work to reach the COP30 event in Belém with something to offer. Thank you very much. We now are going to need a lot of adrenaline, and so those who already